Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible. And here today to help me with that mission are some of the author experts of a new book that we have coming out. This book is called Stop the Silence: Thriving After Child Sexual Abuse. And before I introduce my authors to you today, I just want to say a humongous thank you to Dr. Pamela J. Pine. She is the lead author of Stop the Silence and the founder of the organization called Stop the Silence. And Pam, just a huge thank you to you. We would not be here without you. Thank you for who you are and what you do in the world on this topic, this very difficult topic that we're diving into with these interviews, you guys. And I'm so proud to be collaborating with you and with all of your stellar author cast that you brought in to help us have these difficult conversations. So I can't really thank Pam enough. So I am about to speak with Laura Sharon. She's the principal of Imperative Dimensions, Inc., where she provides management consulting and executive coaching services to organizations and individuals. And Martha Lazo Munoz, aka Marty, author and speaker, domestic violence coach and mentor. And you mentor in English and Spanish, Marty, it looks like. All right, awesome. Welcome to both of you. Thank you so much for saying yes to this project. And thank you for stepping up to the challenge I gave you to really put your hearts on these pages and step up with vulnerable stories. And for our listeners, this book is also offering their master teachings, their practices in this theme of healing that are going to help you guys move through some of the challenges, we hope, right? So these books are so full of goodness. So Laura, let's start with you. Tell us a little bit about the chapter that you wrote.
Sure. Thanks, Laura. Great to be here. The two Lauras here on YouTube TV.
Love it.
So my chapter is called Creative Expression, a path to release for relief. And so a big part of my story in my healing has been using creativity as an avenue or a path to work through memories of the trauma that came up for me early on. And I have to tell you, I still use this technique all the time. In fact, just on Monday, I took the day off from work and spent the day drawing and pushing pastels and colors around on the page. And the whole focus of the chapter is you just start somewhere. You know, the voices come inside our heads. I'm not good enough. I'm not an artist. I'm not creative, all that nonsense that fills our heads. And my message to folks is to please just try to quiet those voices and just start somewhere. You know, crayons, a piece of drugstore paper, a piece of printer paper. You just begin somewhere and you'll watch what happens as you start to put things outside of yourself and onto that paper. It relieves stuff inside you that you didn't even know was blocking you.
And you know what I love about this therapeutic way is that you don't have to have any words. So tell me more about why that is so awesome.
Yeah, so my journey, Laura knows this, was in between therapy sessions, and again, this was 30 years ago, 30 plus years ago, I would struggle with PTSD. I would have night terrors. I'd wake up at 3 a.m. and there were no words. Like I would wake up with these feelings, just heavy feelings and visual pictures in my head that I had no words for. And so I didn't really understand what was happening at the time. But I could pick a color. I knew that what I was feeling, or that pressure that was holding me down from a dream that I had had, was red or black or purple. And I just pulled out a piece of paper and started, and I use pastels mostly because I'm very tactile, and I just started rubbing colors around on the page. And as that process unfolded, it really did bring me in a tremendous amount of relief because I had no words. I didn't know what the words were. Over time, the words started to come as I was pushing the color around. An image would come into my head, and I'd be like, "Oh my God." And then I would begin to name what was happening. So my journey has been a combination of art and poetry mostly, as well as other types of writing.
I had one of the other authors mention poetry as well, and I love talking about the art because we need all of the ways, traditional, not non-traditional, alternative, holistic, so that people understand if one thing isn't working, there might be another way, to do that. So I love that you're using the art. I happen to be taking an art class right now, so I'm like, yes, she's talking about art. And it's different to sit down and not, for me, like writing every day. So this is different, and it opens up a different place in you, which is something we want to access for healing.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, that I started using the technique mostly during times when I was, it wasn't appropriate to call somebody in the middle of the night, or it was 3 a.m. and I
That's a
woke up
good point.
sweating, and I had nobody, and it was just me. And I'm like, oh my God, what do I do with this? And so that I think is an important dimension of this, and what you just talked about there, Laura, which is, we need tools that can help us through times when our support system is not available, and it teaches us how to learn to be with those intense feelings, without something external to soothe us, right? It's like we find our own way. And so the art is the venue for that.
Yes, very empowering. That's awesome. Laura, thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you.
Martha, tell us about your chapter.
Well, thank you, first of all, Laura, for having me here. And absolutely 100% thank you to Dr. Pine, because Pamela, she's amazing. She was my cheerleader from the very beginning and just helped encourage me. Sometimes we still have some fear factors going on. Am I good enough? It's not good enough. Do I tell my story? And yet I've written a book and have several back-to-back books coming out. But at any rate, thank you, Laura, for hosting this event. So my healing, my philosophy comes from my faith and my belief in God, Jesus Christ. So I was raised a Catholic. I was raised in Catholicism. So not only is it a taught faith, however, one has to develop that within your own. So as I grew up, I got to see, I look back, hindsight, retrospect in my life, how God orchestrated powerful, amazing women to come along my journey and help me through, believers and non-believers. My first teacher, college professor, at my first experience with going back to school, was a MFCC, marriage family therapist. And so she gently guided me towards healing, towards dealing with the post-traumatic stress disorder, with traumas, with triggers. She could immediately identify there was something going on in my life, the dysfunction. But at any rate, so I use the tools and the techniques of the healing process through God's journey, God's way, with love, empowerment, encouragement, embracing, and teaching women that you don't have to stay stuck, you don't have to stay where you're at. Let's talk about it. So more of a unity type of environment is what I offer, and the tips and the tools and the resources that I use is biblically based, and that's to love one another, support one another, carry each other's burdens. So if a sister is hurting, I'm going to hurt. And not that I have this mentality that I'm going to heal the world type of thing, but if I can be a tool, if I can be a piece in someone's life, then that's what I'm here for, is to help. So unbeknownst to me, when I wrote my first book, Laura, it came out. And so being in the healthcare background as a recruiter, a healthcare recruiter, I began to share my book with some of the doctors and some of the nurses, unbeknownst to me that they were going to come forward and share their stories of domestic violence and sexual abuse. And so I opened up a platform during the pandemic. And before you knew it, I had, from 5 to 10 to 20 women that wanted to come on this platform and speak and share their stories. So it's been an interesting journey, quite a quest for me, and it's ongoing, continuously working with the healthcare professionals, because oftentimes they suffer in silence. They don't want to talk about what's going on behind closed doors, because after all, they're the professional, right? We go to them to help us heal. And so how are they going to come forward? But, I like to just put it out there to everyone that domestic violence holds no boundaries. It matters not your journey, your background, where you come from, or sexual abuse for that matter. So that's it in a nutshell. That's basically my story, my testimony. My title is From Brokenness to Beauty. So I like to call it that we are broken, and how can we get to the beauty? And that's from healing within. And I liked what Laura was sharing about the colors. I thought that was just so beautiful. And it's true. Sometimes we have no words to express how we feel, the hurt, the pain, the shame, et cetera, et cetera. So that's basically it in a nutshell.
So, one of the things that's coming up over and over that you mentioned also just now is that as soon as you're out loud, in your case with a book, you shared your story, all of a sudden you realize how many people you've just given permission to tell their story, and they start coming out of the woodworks and trusting you, I think, because you had the courage to actually speak up. And I'm hearing that story over and over. I guess, were you surprised in the beginning when that started to happen? Yeah.
Very. I mean,
Yeah.
and this was my mentality. Society as a whole, I believe that we think someone who is highly educated, has degrees, and helps us in the physical realm, the medical field, how could they possibly have such a story? And again, like I said, unbeknownst to me, when personal doctors and nurses started to come forward, I thought, oh my gosh, there's just talk about demand and supply. And so, yeah, I found it, really interesting. But there again, having the empathy for women, and there are some men that also experience, domestic violence. But yeah, I just found it really interesting. So there's a need, there's a definite need in this arena. So I think this is perfect. This is ideal with what you're doing and what Dr. Pamela is doing as well.
So, ladies, these are tough topics. And I think that one of the things that I'm most proud of in a project like this is that we are attempting to normalize these conversations around things like child sexual abuse, domestic violence. And that is how we address it. It's part of how we address it in the first place, normalizing the conversation. So, Martha, I'm going to stick with you for this first question. What's important about that to you, about normalizing this conversation? What stands out as something you want people to know about that?
I think primarily it's that it still is a big hush hush. I find that sometimes they don't want to talk about it, they meaning healthcare professionals, especially, because now that kind of seems to be my focus. It's just where I feel like I'm drawn to the healthcare professionals, because they suffer in silence, believe me. And so I just think it's just really important to continuously, bring it forth to the light. I'm currently on another platform, post-traumatic stress disorder with the nurses, can be found on nursebook.us. And that's coming up. That's a new platform that I've collaborated with another healthcare professional. And so there again, I just feel there's just such an importance because it's going to affect us. We know for those of us that have gone through, whether it's sexual abuse, domestic violence, or what have you, how it alters your mind, the behaviors that manifest, right? Some of the decisions we make are based on, emotion, fears. Um, and so for that reason, they're in healthcare. We turn to the doctors, to the nurses to help us. So how about turning it around and let's help them in order to effectively be able to serve the community. So I have a really close relationship with a few doctors and nurses, and they're just very dear to my heart. And so I want to encourage them, empower them, and give them the tools and the resources. And again, this is an ongoing journey, ladies. I mean, it's not going to stop here. We know that it's going to be ongoing. So whatever piece or portion that I'm supposed to do here on planet Earth, that's my calling. That's my job. That's what I'm doing. And here I thought I was going to retire.
Oh my goodness. Oh well.
No such
Still
thing.
still work. Exactly. Exactly. Well, especially when you're doing this kind of work that is very purposeful and fulfilling. And I feel like I will do that kind of work and until the end. Who wants to retire anyway, right? Thank you for talking about that. Laura, what about you in terms of normalizing these conversations? What's important about that to you?
So I have witnessed that courage is contagious. I've lived that. I've seen it in action in my circle of people who I'm with in my life, and then the ripple effect of that, right? And so, to me, and I think that Marty touched on this a little bit, which is that shame, which comes first and foremost when you have trauma. Somehow, I believe that, especially as children, it all comes from we're trying to make sense of what has happened, right? How possibly could someone, an adult, do this to a child, right? And so it's I have come to believe, a normal response, really, to take the shame on and say, well, there must have been something I did, or I am bad, or there was something innate about me that caused this to happen. And I think that the world is very, very wounded around these issues right now. And it's coming out sideways. It's been coming out sideways for years and years. And I feel like the normalizing of the conversation, the naming of the issues, the naming of the intense emotion is the way out of a lot of the chronic problems that we have in our cultures around addiction. Silence, shame loves silence and it loves darkness. And when we shine light on it, it doesn't survive, because it normalizes our experiences, these things that have happened that we feel like, oh my goodness, we're the only one, and I have this secret. When you start sharing it out loud with other people and you realize they too have similar kind of experience, if not exact, it just takes the power out of it. It takes the power away from the abusers. It gives us the power to heal. And it's funny, Marty, when you were talking, because I was on the path to become a medical professional back in the day. And it was part of my story that was when I started to wake up. I was being drawn into the helping professions, probably as a way to avoid dealing with my own issues. I could help other people, but don't ask me. And I literally remember the first therapist I went to was on a college campus when I was in nursing school. And I told her, I was like, okay, we're not opening that Pandora's box. Like, we can talk about this, but not that. And little did I know, right, that, all of it was happening and I was in it because the universe was leading me to healing. It was a big, huge piece of my healing. So I applaud the work that you're doing. There are many, many out there who just need to know that, it's not about title. There's CEOs who've been traumatized terribly in businesses and all over the world. And it's, and we all are paying a price for the untreated, unhealed right now. And so I personally feel like normalizing the conversation is just the very basic first step. Like, let's tell our stories, let's put it out there and not let it hide in secrecy anymore.
Yes. Oh my goodness. For sure. Okay, let's slide right into why all of our books, all of the titles that I publish take a holistic approach. And you're both already talking about different ways that we look at this holistically. And I believe that is the approach. It's really going to be the most effective approach, is a holistic approach to trauma healing, right? So Laura, why holistic in your eyes?
Well, let's see, how much time do we have?
I know. It's a big question for sure.
Well, it is. And I would say, you know, from my own life experience, I mean, I had lots of physical illnesses as a kid. I was always at the doctor. I was accident prone. I got into addiction. I mean, I just am like the textbook case of a survivor who was just trying to cope and not understanding what in the world was going on, and feeling very dark. I mean, I was dark as a very young child, and it never made any sense to me, you know. And so, so I think that my experience has been that the healing happens in, you know, as we're ready to pull up another piece and take off another. And, you know, I have gone to MDs who have told me, well, the only thing I can do for you is give you Valium or, you know, some addictive substance. And I'm like, no, I can't take that. So then I go to try the next thing and then the next thing. And the combination of things, you know, and lately, the latest thing for me in the last 10 years has been to just develop a very deep practice of yoga, which helps to bring all this stuff that's even still today. And I'm, you know, I'm in my 60s, still today in my body in places. And so it really requires different things at different times, depending on what's going on. You know, if there was a long period where I did massage therapy every week because I had trouble being touched, you know, things like that. So it's about listening to your body, listening to your intuition, and trying the different paths that are available, because the whole of us has been wounded. And so, of course, the solution is a holistic approach, is how I would say it.
Perfectly said. I love how you started that part of this conversation. Martha, what do you want to add to that? You know, you work with healthcare practitioners. So why holistic? Why is this important?
I think I just kind of reiterate what Laura said. I, you know, piggyback off of what she was saying in terms of what happens, what transpires with abuse is that you internalize it. So whether you become, you know, drug addict, alcoholic, spendaholic, foodaholic, we just seem to just go off in search of our healing, right? And so for me, I did all those things, you know, obsessive with, you know, compulsive, you know, drinking patterns. You know, I'll have a glass of wine and it turned into maybe a bottle of wine or something like that, you know, the spending, the overspending, and just trying to fix and trying to heal the hurt. And now through my journey, through my process, I'm able to identify, and I literally just talk to myself, okay, what's going on? Let's talk about it, sister, you know. And the walks definitely for me is key. I've got to get out. Your body does speak to you loud and clear. It'll tell you exactly what's going on. You know, when something's going on within your body, it's, you know, what am I not dealing with? I need to do self therapy on myself as well. So for me, walking has been a tremendous help. And I've got to, you know, get myself back on there. But because we can fall off, we can do a little bit too much of this or too little of this. And so it's important to try to keep that um, even keel, if you will, right? And so taking all those things that I do for myself, I share that with others. What's going on? What are you doing? What are you not doing? Right now, I'm dealing with a healthcare professional that, you know, she's afraid. She's very afraid to speak about her journey because maybe a spouse or a colleague is involved, and so they cannot, you know, speak about it. So it's teaching her how to identify what's going on within her body. Because you can become anorexic too, right? Not just the overeating, but she's finding herself anorexic. So for me, again, the healing, the holistic for me is really important. Listening to your body for sure. It'll tell you exactly what's going on. If you headaches, backaches, any kind of, stress aches, what have you, your body will let you know. So it's very important to do some sort of an outlet, within your body to release that. And it's amazing how the body, can heal itself.
Very amazing. And really want to encourage people. There are many, many different kinds of practices to try. Not everything works for every person, and not everything works for everyone every time they use it. And so that's what I loved. I think, Laura, you were saying, at different stages of your life, you might need different things, and just to be aware and open to try whatever that is at whatever stage you need. And there's, oh my gosh, you're right about, this one being a big topic. We could talk about holistic healing forever and ever. Martha, I've seen the terms victim, survivor, and now thriver. Is it important to you to stop using the term victim as a label? What are your thoughts about the labels?
100%. I call myself a conqueror. I don't say survivor. I conquered. So it's done, it's over. That's my past. So I think it's really key. When I hear the words, victim, I was a victim. To me, when I hear that, it just seems like you're still identifying yourself as you're still a victim. And so I have survived, but I conquered that experience. So definitely some of the terms I think that we are still using in society, we need to change that. We need to tweak it, and we need to put it out there. What are some of the healthier words that we can use to, if you've overcome, you overcame, you've triumphed, you sought help, you're healing. And like Laura was saying, it's like we're an onion. It's going to be layers. We're not going to instantly heal. It's continuous. Sometimes I still find myself with a trigger, or not, again, I just immediately ask myself, okay, what was that about? Let's talk about it. So definitely going back to your question, I think that's really important, is to change some of the verbiage that we use.
Awesome. Thank you for that. I think so too. And I love the term conqueror. I like that one. Laura, how about you on this one? What's important to you with the labels?
I think that the labels describe a process, or describe the process of how we experience what has happened to us and in our lives, and so they have a place. um, as I have healed and grown, the word victim doesn't resonate with me anymore. It's like I kind of outgrew it. But at the time when I was first starting my process, it was important to recognize that, like, I didn't ask for what happened to me, that it was somebody else's unhealed shit, excuse my language, that got spewed on me, for lack of a better word. And then in my case, it was my dad, and he died before I was 18, before I started having the memories of what happened to me. And so I often felt like, oh my God, I was left to clean up his mess. Like, come on, how unfair is that? And I needed to be indignant, and I needed to be angry. But that only goes so far, because you don't want to be stuck in that place because it doesn't feel good. It disturbs your peace. It interferes with having a calm and peaceful life, a happy life. And so to me, it's this evolution of, okay, there's that phase, and then there's this phase where, I think of it as like being a warrior, or a warrioress. It's like you go into like survival mode, and you learn all these tools to help push you even further, forward, which is the thriver part. And, it's so interesting because now there were times when I look back and I think, oh my God, I could not tell anybody anything out loud about what was happening inside of me. And now, I mean, I don't go talk to strangers about it, but I don't have the emotional attachment to it anymore, which I think is part of the thriving. It's like you can be strong and productive and happy, and you don't have to. And I know how to protect myself now, which when I was a child, I didn't have those skills, but now I've developed those skills and I know what boundaries are and I know how to set and hold them. And to me, that's what happens when you start to thrive is you just have very strong, clear sense of what's okay and what's not okay. And you're not afraid to speak up for yourself, and the freedom that comes with that is profound.
Definitely. And thank you for talking about the personal piece of your experience. This is perfect because I'll stick with you a minute to kind of slide into this next idea. So first of all, if you look at the statistic about the fact that I think it's in the 90th percentile. I wish I had the actual number for you guys, but in the 90th percentile of these cases, the abuse is not by a stranger. It's inner circle, it's family member, it's people that and that first off is a little scary. But because of that, I wanted to ask you both about grooming. So grooming is a topic I wished I had known more about before my family went through its situation. Laura, what's one thing you want people to know about that?
I guess what comes to my mind today is this notion of privilege, schmivilege. I grew up in what on the outside world people would say was a privileged home. It looked really good. We had a lot of material things. On paper, it was like unfathomable for someone outside to think that what was going on inside was what it was. And so I guess that would be my first response is that, these issues, they know no bounds, no class lines, no gender lines, no, there are stories in the news constantly of people who appear to have it all, right? Who have terrible, terrible, horrific, traumatic stories and or who perpetuate it. And so that would probably be my first thing. And, as an example, I'll just say when I started having my memories, my pediatrician was still alive at the time. And I went to him. I found him and I went to him as part of my excavation of the truth. And I asked him for a copy of my medical records, and he, they were some storage locker in Florida. He gave me the information. I wrote to them. I got the copy. And when I met with him, the only thing he said to me was, "Don't tell your mom that I gave this to you."
Wow.
So, it runs deep and it runs wide. And in my medical file, when I was 6, I had been hospitalized. What I learned was my pediatrician had me tested for gonorrhea. It was a secret that nobody ever knew, but I found it in this paperwork, So anyway, I just think the privilege schmivilege is this sort of thing. I would say it's like, don't be fooled to think that this isn't happening in the fanciest of neighborhoods all over the world.
Yes, I appreciate that. And these are the kinds of things, this is how, gosh, you guys, thank you so much. I mean, this is how we do this. This is how we do this. These are the stories that need to be out loud. So in case it helps somebody, right? Martha, how about you on this topic? And what's something you want people to know about the grooming?
Absolutely. In my first book, I actually have a chapter about grooming. And so it talks about, my chapter is titled Friendly Neighbors. So the friendly neighbors were, now that I look back, were experts at grooming children. It was a husband and wife team. They had no children. And so they were very kind, they were friendly, they'd come over, they'd bring us gifts and toys and just the friendliest people in town. Well, hindsight now just tells me that this was, in all probability, what they did and what they do. I mean, now I don't know because that was way back when, but they certainly groom you by bringing you gifts and toys, and they first work on the parents. Because as I recall, they were awfully friendly to my father. We had just moved from Texas. I was born in Texas. And so we had just moved back from Texas to Los Angeles, California, and in any rate, my dad loved, working on his cars and, with all these tools and whatnot. And so here comes the friendly neighbors to help my dad. So while us little kids, children were running around, they saw perfect opportunity. So they first befriend the parents, they befriend the children, they start grooming by helping, giving you toys and goodies and candies and whatever. And so this is to groom the child and the parents to allowing quiet time, personal time with these perpetrators. So I look at that now. And so in my book, my first book, that's what I talk about is parents, please beware, please be mindful and cautious of where your children are. Don't be so quick to allow your children to go with literally strangers. And even it could be a family member, as Laura was saying, on the outside, the family looks like it's really all together, but on the inside, we don't know what's taking place, right? Could it be the father, the grandfather, the brother, the uncle, what have you? Even a woman, it could be a woman also. So it's just being careful, being mindful of who is around your children and your children. And I think
Yeah.
that's really key. So I share that also, that message across the board as well. Mindful of the children.
Yes. I want to add that if it seems odd, it's odd.
Mhm.
And that was some of the grooming I experienced of me in the behaviors rode the line of appropriate, but really I leaned over to, oh, that's just odd. And it can be so frustrating to look back, of course. So I try not to do that too often, but to talk about it is good, because if that helps somebody else who's in the situation who has, and that's been coming up, oh, that seems odd. Yes, it's odd.
Mhm.
And like, I want people to trust their intuition. I want people to trust the first thought that they're having about it and not have 10 other thoughts that dampen the first one down, right? And so that's what I wanted to add about that. Okay, so Martha, last question for you today. We authors, we experts, we like to talk about ourselves more as guides or facilitators on this journey. We know that we don't fix people, but we love to help empower people to connect with their own inner wisdom and that intuition I was talking about. So, what's one way you'd like to help our listeners today feel empowered? What's that one thing you'd like them to know?
Definitely be mindful of your intuitiveness. I believe God has given each one of us that ability to feel, to sense. If it feels odd, if it feels strange, question it. And don't allow yourself to self-sabotage yourself into thinking, oh, well, that's just the way he is, or just that's the way she is, or they went through a hard background or what have you. I've heard every story in the book. Zero in on what's going on in your circle. If it doesn't feel right, it's not right. 99%. So zero in on how you're feeling, what's going on, and definitely take the next step, whatever it is that you need to do, whether it's calling, 911, filing the report or what have you, take action behind what's going on, how you're feeling.
Thank you. Laura, how about you? How do you want to help people feel empowered?
I would say just never, 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 never give up. Never, 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 never give up. We've lost so many people who are survivors of trauma, to suicide, to addiction, to overdoses. I mean, it makes me so emotional just even thinking about the number of lives that have been lost because people haven't been able to arrive to this place where we are today and what we're talking about, where they could speak openly and freely and they could release a lot of the baggage that comes with being a survivor of any kind of trauma, really, but the sexual abuse is quite profound. So the never, never give up, I wanted to give up many times. I was 5 years sober. I wanted to kill myself, but I was plugged into the recovery groups. And so I learned how to just keep showing up even when I didn't want to, or when I felt hopeless, or to reach out, to pick up the phone and call someone and just make the connection. And I think that's what happens is, the shame and everything causes such profound disconnection between us and other humans and God, if you will. And I think that the journey forward is all about reconnecting and being able to, and I think in my book that I published of poetry and drawings, I explained it as it's like, to heal from this stuff, you have to dive into all the things that your body and soul are telling you to run away from. Love, hurt, vulnerability. I mean, it's like we have to kind of go through all of it in order to come out the other side. And so, giving up, sometimes for some people, it just feels too overwhelming and they can't handle it. And I cannot tell you the number of people that I have known who just couldn't do it. And for whatever reasons. And so that would be my message.
Never, 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 never give up. I like that.
Never,
I
never,
like
never.
all the nevers.
Never, 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 never. I wrote it myself a note on my board. There's a great organization called Because I Said I Would, and they have these little cards. And on my bulletin board, I have written my note to myself: never, 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 never give up. Just in case I forget.
Laura and Martha, thank you so much for what you're doing in the world. And thank you for being here today to share it with everyone. Thanks, ladies.
Thank you, Laura.
So you guys, these books are actually more than books. To me, the community has been the difference between success and failure. And as you dive into this community with Stop the Silence, you're going to have the book, but you're going to have a community of men and women who really care about your next steps, and they're there to offer support. And I know you heard something Laura or Martha said today that maybe sparked a little spark. Well, drop on down to the show notes. I have them hooked up with their websites there. Please go have an exploration of all the amazing things that they're up to. They are very generously there for you all to help you with what that next step might be, right? And of course, you're also invited to join us for the book launch party. We're going to be having that on March 10th at 10 a.m. I'll be with all of the Stop the Silence authors, and they'll be sharing their wisdom and inspiration with you to celebrate the launch of the book. And if you happen to be listening to this interview around that date, that means you can also hop over to Amazon and purchase the book at that point. And lastly today, everybody, I want you to remember your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. So it is time to be brave. See you next time, everyone. Thank you, ladies.